Since the beginning of this war, Donald Trump has sent conflicting messages about what the U.S. aims to achieve and how long the fighting could go on. After a few days, Trump was already boasting the U.S. was ahead of schedule in achieving its military aims, suggesting the war would be wrapped up within 4 to 5 weeks. He has also been saying the U.S. could expand its operations, though he's insistent that will not lead to another lengthy conflict in the Middle East.
We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good. Short-term. Short-term.
For more on this, let's bring in Ian Bremmer. He's a political scientist and founder and president of the political risk consultancy Eurasia Group. Welcome, Ian. Tell us, how do you interpret the latest mixed messages from U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration? On the one hand, Trump suggests that the war is almost over, and he also says that the U.S. is going to go further. What do you make of that?
He's looking for an off-ramp. And it's challenging. He's put himself in a bit of a box, both in terms of Israel, which is very interested in this war going a lot farther than I think the Americans have appetite for. Also, in terms of creating stability in the Gulf, which is a lot harder than Trump would like it to be. And of course, there are market implications and energy implications for that. And then finally, getting to yes with whatever the Iranian regime is going to be. And that's a very different place from what Trump was saying just a few days ago, from the demands that he had coming from Iran.
Trump insists that the U.S. military campaign in Iran has been a tremendous success. How do you see it?
Well, I see that whatever Trump does, he's going to paint it that way. I'm not surprised. No one should be surprised. There have been successful aspects of the strikes. The Iranian Navy is basically destroyed. Their ballistic missile capabilities are mostly destroyed. And if you want to decapitate the leadership, you have decapitated a fair amount of the leadership. That all matters. But they still have nuclear capabilities and stockpiles of enriched uranium. They've got a lot of drones, and they have the capacity to make a lot more drones, and they're very cheap. And they can be ramped up quickly, as we've seen from the Ukrainians, even under wartime conditions, some 4 million a year that they're producing. So Iran can do that. And then further, Trump has said that he was going to rescue the Iranian people. Right now, if the war were over tomorrow, the Iranian people are in worse condition than if Trump had never launched a war. So that ain't happening. And he said that he has to have a say over the next leader of Iran. Well, that doesn't appear to be happening either. So for Trump to say he's winning or to announce that he's won really requires changing his own goals for the war, which he's very capable of doing, but it's not clear that everyone's going to allow him to get away with that.
Is it clear to you what objectives the Trump administration has in this war?
Sure. Well, originally, sure. They wanted Venezuela redux. I mean, they sat down in negotiations with the Iranians, and they had lots of demands that the Iranian government was unprepared to accept. So this was a combination of last year's 12-day war, which is take out a number of the military capabilities that the Iranians refused to negotiate away, and at the same time remove significant parts of the leadership that you find intransigent. And then once you've done both of those, you're in a better negotiating position with leaders that come in that, of course, are willing to negotiate with you because they've just seen what you're capable of doing. In other words, bigger than Venezuela, but the same basic playbook. And by the way, Trump has been wildly successful with that playbook in Venezuela. There's only one problem, and that's that it turns out that Iran is not Venezuela.
From the beginning of this war, people have been looking to figure out what Trump's objectives are and whether there's any consistency there. It does not appear to be a lot of consistency. If we don't know what the real mission is in Iran, how will we know when it's been accomplished, and how will Trump know and Netanyahu know that it's time to end the war?
Well, I just told you what the mission was. The problem is that that mission has failed and they don't have a backup plan. So now Trump is flailing around for a backup plan. Netanyahu knows what the mission is. It's destroy this regime, destroy their capabilities to project power around the region, both directly and through proxies. He's been doing a lot of that over the last couple of years, by the way. Now, for Netanyahu, if that means a civil war, not such a big problem. For Netanyahu, if that means lots and lots of Iranians get killed, his population generally supports that. As long as the regime goes away, they're very supportive of the war. Problem is that the United States is not. The American population opposes this war, opposes the high oil prices, opposes the 7 American servicemen and women that have already come back dead, and they're having a hard time figuring out why Trump needed to do this, because the entire war is on Trump. Right? I mean, this is not one you get to blame Biden on. You don't get to blame the Israelis. You don't get to blame the Europeans or the Gulf states. Trump chose to do this. He chose to do it by himself, without his allies, without the Europeans, without the Gulf states, only with Israel. He chose to do it at the time that he did, and he chose to do it much, much larger than what was necessary to just take out the military and nuclear capabilities. So to the extent that all of that is now failing, Trump owns it. And by the way, Secretary Hegseth said that just this morning. He gave a press conference. People were saying, well, you know, when is this war over? And he said, hey, this is all Trump. Like, he's the decider. He's the one that will decide. He has this hand on the throttle. He'll decide, just as he decided the mission, he'll decide when it's over. So it is completely Trump's war. And to the extent that this war is going badly and has an initial mission that can't actually be fulfilled, that's for a guy who's, you know, trying to get midterm elections going his way. This is really a bad decision, right? I consider this the worst foreign policy decision Trump has made in either of his 2 administrations, and that's quite significant.
Looking at leadership, on the other side now, we're looking at a new supreme leader in Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei. The son of Ali Khamenei is now the new supreme leader in Iran. As you mentioned, Donald Trump wanted to have a role in choosing the next leader. He obviously didn't get that. So my question to you is does the new leader have a target on his back, and what sort of changes should we expect from Iran under this new leadership, if any?
He does have a target on his back. I expect that target is more of an Israeli target than an American target. I think Trump is clear that he would be willing to work with this guy even now, though he didn't say that a few days ago, if the war came to a close and they could find a way to reopen the straits, stop the drones from being hit. For this point, Trump would be okay with it. I mean, there are problems there. Again, this is a regime that is still very capable and willing to brutalize their own population. They killed an estimated 30,000 in the matter of just a few days. And I've heard that not just from American sources, I've heard that from European sources over the past weeks, back in January. And you know, that capacity and willingness to repress their own people is not diminished today. I mean, a lot of the reason why you see the Iranians continuing to pop off drones and missiles across the region is to show their own population, we are still in charge. Don't think about coming after us. So that's a big problem. And also, you know, the Americans have a big problem in dealing with this guy, even beyond how much brutality the Iranian people will experience. As of right now, the United States, as Europe, want lower oil prices. That means you still need the oil to come out of the Persian Gulf, including from Iran. And Trump has thought about taking Karg Island, where all of that oil from Iran is exported. So far, they've chosen not to do it because they worry that it could be a disaster. Lots of casualties, and maybe the Iranians blow it up. The Iranians also have all of this enriched uranium stockpiles. The Americans have thought about sending in commandos to take it out, maybe to remove it from Esfahan. They've chosen so far not to do it because it's extremely dangerous. It's hard to destroy. American troops would be at a lot of risk if they do that. So far, Trump hasn't made that order. But if he ends up with the regime that he hates, with money coming from oil that he can't stop, to pay for a nuclear program that they will be dead set on getting, because the one way you avoid getting decapitated is if you've got nukes, right? We've learned that is a problematic set of facts for this American president.
Let's talk about the broader implications of this war, Ian. You've already mentioned oil. Iran has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting oil and gas shipments from the Gulf. What would be the impact if it stays shut for many weeks or even months?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to imagine oil going much more than 120 for a sustained period of time, because at that point you see lots of demand destruction, that you change consumer behavior, change industrial behavior of the people that are buying the oil. So oil prices are at 120, but the total volume is down, the total demand is down, the amount of money that's going through the economy is down. That's obviously really problematic. I've got to tell you, I'm not surprised oil prices came down on the back of Trump's statements, because they are indeed de-escalatory. But right now, the Trump plan for getting oil through, which involves providing insurance as well as providing military escort, which is being ramped up, the shippers are not okay with that. They say this is still too dangerous. As long as Iran has the ability to shoot drones, we don't think it is okay, even with escorts, to send these ships, that we are risking our crews. It's unacceptable. Sure. So at this point, it does not seem to me that the straits are going to be reopened soon. And if that's the case, the markets are seeing something I don't understand in terms of the level of complacency around oil price right now.
Of course, the markets in Asia have been hit harder, particularly in South Korea. We're seeing, like 8% drops there, but we'll see, where that goes from day to day. This conflict, though, it's engulfed the whole region, and the impact is being felt around the world. Looking at this bigger picture, what are some of the more far-reaching implications of this war that maybe aren't getting talked about as much as they should? Because you're really good at connecting the dots of things happening in the world. Help us out here, understand what it could mean in more far-reaching terms.
Well, I mean, the most obvious one is that the Russians are beneficiaries. The oil price is up. The Indians have had their sanctions suspended so they can buy more Russian crude. A lot of the weapons that were going into the Ukrainian fight that the Americans were selling to the Europeans are now going to be needed for Iran and the Gulf, all of which makes life easier for Putin and more challenging for Zelensky in that ongoing fight. Very important to your viewers. Beyond that, the Gulf states are very angry. They're particularly angry at Israel, but they're angry at the Americans too for why it is that they were put in this position, why it is that they're vulnerable. Long-term, the potential that the Abraham Accords will be under strain, and that the willingness of some of these governments to maintain stable relations, functional diplomatic relations, economic relations, technology relations with the Israelis, given everything going on, that's a concern. And then, of course, you have the fact that anti-Semitism has already been way up in terms of attacks around the world. Terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism, something we haven't spoken as much about, but the Iranians have been one of the leading exporters. And, with this decapitation strike, that, of course, is something that you would expect a much greater worry, not just in the region, but more broadly. And that's something, it's hard to imagine that, a country of 93 million people, you take out their leaders and it's fine. And Trump announces the war is over, and the war is actually over. That is hard to imagine. A country that already was teetering on lack of any economic capacity to take care of its people, with a massive water crisis, with electricity crisis, with extremely poor infrastructure. Now that's all getting blown up. What's the possibility that Iran as a country starts to fall apart? And there are massive refugee flows. as a consequence of that, humanitarian crises, weapons flows that suddenly are all over the place because people sell whatever it is they have. Those are longer term concerns that I think are going to be clear consequences of this war for, again, well beyond when the fighting in Iran stops.
And finally, you've called this conflict a war of choice, suggesting that it wasn't really necessary. What kind of message does that send to the rest of the world? Could it serve as a precedent for other countries looking to eliminate a perceived threat from a rival or conquer new territory?
Well, the Russians don't need much of a signal to try to do that. They're just incapable. The Chinese definitely would feel more justified, say, in Taiwan, but I don't think they need more of a justification. They just don't have that military capacity today, and they also don't have the military leadership. Plus, they're very risk averse. But certainly, Venezuela sent that message to lots of folks. The big message is that the most powerful country in the world, the most powerful military in the world, is acting unilaterally. And they're doing so not only without concern for international law, and it wouldn't be the first time that happened, but also without coordination with any of their core allies. And that's something that certainly unnerves the Europeans, the Canadians, the Japanese, the South Koreans, Australians, countries all over the world. This had been the most powerful alliance, NATO and the U.S.-led group of military alliances more broadly. And those alliances, frankly, are facing very significant disruption from this U.S. policy set.
Ian, thank you very much for your insights. That was Ian Bremmer from the Eurasia Group.
Good talking.